In the heart of a treacherous jungle, Captain Richard Hargreaves vanished, chasing the fabled Emerald of the Andes, his cryptic map the only clue. Was it greed, betrayal, or the jungle's curse? A scarred guide, a loyal partner, a pompous funder, and a charming rival. Each hides a secret. Join Miss Jane Marple, the unassuming spinster with a razor-sharp mind, as she unravels a web of lies, from red clay tracks to a hidden temple's shadow. One truth, one killer, one deadly choice. Will you uncover the cost of the emerald? Chapter 1. The Whisper of the Map. In the quiet village of St. Mary Mead, where the seasons turned with the gentle predictability of a well-wound clock, Miss Jane Marple sat in her drawing room, her fingers deftly working a pair of knitting needles through a skein of pale pink wool. The late afternoon sun slanted through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the polished oak floor. Beyond her window, the vicarage garden bloomed with the last defiant roses of autumn, their petals a soft rebuke to the encroaching chill. To the casual observer, Miss Marple appeared the epitome of serene domesticity. An elderly spinster, her white hair neatly pinned, her blue eyes mild behind spectacles. Yet those who knew her understood that beneath this unassuming exterior lay a mind as sharp as the needles in her hands, attuned to the subtle discords of human nature. On this particular October afternoon, the village was anything but serene. A murmur of excitement had rippled through St. Mary Mead, carried on the tongues of postmen and shopkeepers, and now it had reached Miss Marple's fireside. The source was a letter delivered that morning from her nephew, Raymond West, a writer of some repute in London's literary circles. Raymond, ever fond of his aunt's knack for unraveling mysteries, had penned a tale that piqued her curiosity far more than the local gossip about Mrs. Price's new hat or the vicar's sermon. Captain Richard Hargreaves, a treasure hunter of considerable fame, had vanished without trace during an expedition to the uncharted jungles of South America. His quest? The Emerald of the Andes, a gem whispered to rival the crown jewels in brilliance and curse. Miss Marple set her knitting in her lap, the needles stilled, as she unfolded Raymond's letter once more. His handwriting, bold yet hurried, betrayed his excitement. Hargreaves, he wrote, had set out 6 months prior with a small party, a guide, a partner, a funder, and, it was rumored, a shadow in the form of a rival treasure hunter. The expedition had been cloaked in secrecy, its details guarded as fiercely as the map Hargreaves was said to carry, a tattered parchment etched with ancient symbols pointing to a hidden temple. The last communication, a cryptic radio message from a base camp, placed Hargreaves deep in the jungle. Then, silence. No body, no map, no emerald, only questions. The local papers, which Miss Marple read with a skeptical eye, spun wild tales. Hargreaves had been swallowed by quicksand, devoured by jaguars, or betrayed by his own greed. The Times hinted at foul play, while the less reputable rags suggested he'd absconded with the treasure. Miss Marple, however, distrusted such theatrics. "Speculation," she murmured to herself, adjusting her spectacles, "is no substitute for observation." She smoothed the letter on her knee, her thoughts drifting to the village's own small dramas. The butcher's apprentice who'd lied about a delivery, the postmistress who'd misdirected a parcel. Small lies, small motives, but always revealing. Hargreaves's disappearance, she sensed, was no accident of nature, but a puzzle of human design. Rising from her chair, she crossed to the window. her gaze settling on the garden path where Mrs. Bantry's collie had once unearthed a neighbor's buried silver. People, she thought, are forever hiding what they value most. Hargreaves' map, she suspected, was the key, not merely to the emerald, but to the hearts of those who'd accompanied him. Raymond's letter mentioned 4 companions, each with their own stake in the venture. A guide, hardened by the wilds, a partner, bound by loyalty or ambition, a funder, whose wealth came with expectations, and a rival, whose motives were as murky as the jungle itself. One of them, Miss Marple, was certain, knew more than they'd told. She returned to her chair, picking up her knitting but not resuming her work. Instead, she considered Raymond's invitation to London, where he proposed to gather the expedition's survivors for a dinner at his flat. "Aunt Jane," he'd written, "your eye for detail would put Scotland Yard to shame. Come and see what you make of them." Miss Marple smiled faintly. Raymond, for all his modern flair, underestimated the quiet power of a village spinster's observations. She had no need for the bustle of London to understand that greed, envy, or fear could turn a man's heart as surely as a jungle could swallow him. As the clock on the mantel struck 4, Miss Marple made her decision. She would go to London, not for the thrill of the mystery, but because truth, like her knitting, required patience to untangle. Folding Raymond's letter, she tucked it into her handbag, alongside a small notebook where she jotted village observations. "Captain Hargreaves," she said softly, as if addressing the absent adventurer, "your treasure may be lost, but your story is not." With that, she resumed her knitting, the click of her needles a quiet prelude to the unraveling of a far greater puzzle. Chapter 2. The Gathering of Shadows. Miss Jane Marple stepped from the train at Paddington Station, her black handbag clutched firmly, its contents as unassuming as the woman herself. A notebook, a ball of pink wool, and a pair of knitting needles, their tips capped to avoid mischief. London's clamor enveloped her, whistles of porters, the clatter of taxi wheels, the hum of voices, but she navigated it with the calm precision of one accustomed to deciphering chaos. Raymond West, her nephew, awaited her, his lean frame and eager smile cutting through the crowd. "Aunt Jane," he called, taking her arm, "you're a marvel for coming." The others are already at the flat, champing at the bit. Miss Marple's blue eyes twinkled behind her spectacles. "People in a hurry to talk," she said softly, "are often in a hurry to hide something." The journey to Raymond's Bloomsbury flat was brief, the taxi weaving through streets lined with Georgian facades, their windows glinting like watchful eyes. Raymond, ever the raconteur, filled the silence with details of Captain Richard Hargreaves's disappearance, his voice alive with the drama of it all. "They're a rum lot, Aunt Jane," he said, adjusting his scarf. "The guide's a tough nut, the partner's all business, the funder's a pompous ass, and the rival, well, he's got charm to spare, but I wouldn't trust him with my fountain pen." Miss Marple listened, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her mind already sifting through the grains of truth in Raymond's theatrical account. "A treasure hunt," she murmured, "brings out the worst in people, Raymond. Greed is a poor companion in a jungle." The flat on the second floor of a smartly kept building was a contrast to St. Mary Mead's cozy parlors. Modern paintings adorned the walls, their bold colors clashing with the understated elegance of Miss Marple's tweed skirt and sensible shoes. A fire crackled in the grate, casting flickering shadows across the room, where 4 figures waited, their postures betraying the unease beneath their polished exteriors. Raymond, with the flair of a host accustomed to literary salons, made introductions, his voice light but his eyes keen. "Miss Marple, my aunt, who has a knack for seeing through people. Allow me to present Diego Alvarez, Eliza Thorne, Sir Henry Winthrop, and Marcus Vane." Diego Alvarez stood first, a wiry man in his 40s, his dark hair streaked with gray, a jagged scar running from his left cheek to his jaw. His handshake was firm, his eyes wary, like those of a man who'd faced both beasts and betrayal in the wilds. "Señorita Marple," he said, his accent thick but precise. "I am only a guide, not a detective, but I will answer what I know." His leather jacket, worn but well kept, smelled faintly of tobacco and earth, and Miss Marple noted the way his fingers twitched, as if longing for the handle of a machete. Eliza Thorne rose next, a woman of perhaps 35, her frame lean and her hair sun-bleached to a pale gold. Her grip was strong, her gray eyes steady, but there was a tightness to her mouth, as if she held back more than she shared. "Miss Marple," she said briskly, "Richard and I were partners. I'd have followed him anywhere, but I didn't see this coming." Her khaki, trousers, and plain blouse spoke of practicality, yet a silver locket at her throat hinted at a sentimentality Miss Marple found intriguing. Loyalty, she thought, is a fine mask for other motives. Sir Henry Winthrop, a portly man in his late 50s, stood with the air of one accustomed to command. His tailored suit strained slightly at the waist, and his florid cheeks suggested a fondness for claret. "An honor, Miss Marple," he boomed, his handshake more a gesture of patronage than warmth. "I funded Hargreaves' venture out of pure scholarly interest. None of this treasure-hunting nonsense for profit, you understand." His gold watch gleamed, its ticking audible in the brief silence, and Miss Marple's mild gaze lingered on it, a detail that seemed at odds with his claim of disinterested generosity. Marcus Vane, the last to rise, was a study in charm. Tall and lean, with dark hair swept back and eyes that sparkled with mischief, he bowed slightly as he took her hand. "Miss Marple, a pleasure," he said, his voice smooth as polished oak. "I'm merely a competitor who admired Hargreaves, even if we chased the same prize." His smile was disarming, but Miss Marple, who had seen such smiles in St. Mary Mead's young rogues, noted the way his eyes flicked to Diego, then away, as if measuring an opponent. "Charm," she mused, "is a currency spent too freely by those with something to conceal." The group settled around Raymond's dining table, the firelight playing across their faces as a maid served tea and sandwiches. Raymond, playing the genial host, steered the conversation to Hargreaves's expedition, his questions light but probing. "Come now," he said, leaning back in his chair. "One of you must know more than you've let on. Hargreaves was no novice to vanish like a ghost." The room grew taut, the clink of teacups the only sound for a moment. Miss Marple sipped her tea, her eyes moving from face to face, cataloging the subtle shifts. A tightened jaw, a fleeting glance, a hand too still. Diego spoke first, his voice low, as if reluctant to stir the air. "The jungle is no place for carelessness," he began. "Captain Hargreaves, he was brave, but stubborn. Always with that map, holding it close, like it was his heart. We trekked for weeks, rivers, vines, mosquitoes, like devils. The map led us to a valley, deep, where the air was heavy. The night he disappeared, I was scouting a path to the temple. Corazon Verde, the map called it. I returned at dawn, and the camp was wrong. His tent torn, his pack gone. No sign of him. His scar seemed to deepen in the firelight, and Miss Marple noted the way. His hands clenched, then released, as if fighting a memory. Eliza Thorne set her cup down with a faint clink. "Richard wasn't reckless," she said, her tone clipped. "We'd faced worse than that jungle, deserts, mountains, bandits. He trusted Diego's roots, but he trusted that map more. That night, he was restless, muttering about symbols on the parchment. I went to the stream for water, maybe an hour. When I came back, the camp was a mess, like a storm had hit. Richard was gone. I searched till dawn, shouting his name, but the jungle swallowed it." Her eyes met Miss Marple's briefly, then dropped, and Miss Marple wondered if the locket at her throat held a clue to her guarded heart. Sir Henry cleared his throat, his voice filling the room like a pronouncement. "I was at the base camp, miles away, mind you. Scholarly oversight, that was my role, ensuring Hargreaves didn't squander my investment. I heard of his disappearance via radio, crackling through the static. A tragedy, of course, but jungles are unpredictable. I'd warned him about risks, but he was a headstrong sort." His fingers toyed with his watch, and Miss Marple observed the faint sheen of sweat on his brow, despite the cool room. Money, she thought, makes men nervous when it's at stake. Marcus Vane leaned forward, his smile undimmed. "I wasn't even with their party, you know. I had my own team, camped a good 10 miles off. Hargreaves and I were rivals, yes, but I respected his nerve. I heard about his vanishing from local guides days later. My own hunt for the emerald was less fortunate." He shrugged, a gesture too casual, and Miss Marple caught the way Diego's eyes narrowed at the mention of the emerald. Distance, she reflected, is a convenient alibi, but not an airtight one. The conversation faltered, the suspects' stories hanging like threads in need of weaving. Raymond, sensing the tension, pressed further. Surely someone saw something, a footprint, a broken branch, a clue? Diego shook his head. Eliza stared at her hands. Sir Henry huffed, and Marcus offered another smile. Miss Marple, silent until now, spoke in her gentle, unhurried way. "It's curious, isn't it, how a man like Captain Hargreaves could vanish so completely. In St. Mary Mead, when something is lost, a ring, a letter, it's often because someone wished it hidden." Her voice was mild, but the room stilled, each suspect meeting her gaze, then looking away. She sipped her tea, her mind turning over the details. Diego's scar and restless hands, Eliza's locket and precise story, Sir Henry's watch and bluster, Marcus's charm and fleeting glance. The map, she sensed, was the pivot around which their secrets turned. "A map," she said almost to herself, "is only as good as the hands that hold it, and hands, I find, reveal so much more than words." Diego's fingers twitched again. Eliza touched her locket. Sir Henry adjusted his watch, and Marcus's smile tightened, just for a moment. As the evening drew on, Raymond proposed they reconvene after he'd gathered more information, perhaps a copy of the map itself. The suspects agreed, their farewells polite but strained. Miss Marple, escorted to her guest room by Raymond, paused at the door. "They're all telling stories, Raymond," she said, her voice low. "But stories, like village gossip, have gaps. It's the gaps we must watch." Raymond grinned, accustomed to his aunt's cryptic wisdom. "You'll have them confessing by dessert next time," he teased. Miss Marple smiled faintly, her eyes distant. "Confessions come later," she said. "First, we observe." Alone in her room, She opened her notebook, jotting down her impressions in her neat, spidery hand. Diego's scar, a mark of violence or survival. Eliza's locket, a keepsake or a secret. Sir Henry's watch, a sign of wealth or impatience. Marcus's charm, a shield or a weapon. The firelight had revealed their faces, but their hearts remained shadowed. As she closed the notebook, Miss Marple thought of St. Mary Mead's postmistress, who'd once hidden a letter out of spite, and the gardener who'd buried a stolen brooch under roses. People, she murmured, are much the same, whether in a village or a jungle, and secrets, like treasures, are never buried too deep to find. Chapter 3. The Guide's Tale. The morning after the gathering at Raymond West's Bloomsbury flat, Miss Jane Marple sat at a small mahogany table in the guest room, her knitting needles clicking softly as she worked on her pale pink shawl. The London air carried a faint tang of coal smoke, seeping through the window's sash, but her thoughts were far from the city's bustle, tethered instead to the dense, shadowed jungles of South America. Raymond had promised to arrange a private meeting with each suspect, and today it was Diego Alvarez, the guide who would face her unassuming scrutiny. Miss Marple's blue eyes, mild behind her spectacles, held a glint of anticipation. A guide, she mused, setting her knitting aside, knows the path forward, but also the places to hide. Diego arrived promptly at 11, his leather jacket creased from travel, his scar more pronounced in the daylight streaming through the window. The sitting room, with its modern paintings and polished furniture, seemed an odd stage for a man who belonged to wilder places. Raymond, playing the genial host, offered coffee, which Diego accepted with a nod, his hands wrapping around the cup as if seeking warmth. "Aunt Jane," Raymond said, settling into an armchair. "Diego's agreed to tell us more about the expedition. No need for formalities, just the truth, as you saw it." His tone was light, but Miss Marple caught the flicker of curiosity in his eyes, mirroring her own. Diego leaned forward, his dark eyes fixed on the coffee cup, as if it held the map to his thoughts. "I am no storyteller, Señorita Marple," he began, his voice low, accented with the cadence of his native tongue. "I am a man of the jungle. I guide, I survive. Captain Hargreaves hired me because I know the Andes, its rivers, its cliffs, its spirits. He came to me in Quito, 6 months ago, with a map and a fire in his eyes. 'The Emerald of the Andes,' he said, 'a gem hidden in a temple, lost for centuries.' He showed me the map, but only pieces, never the whole. He did not trust easily." Miss Marple nodded, her hands folded in her lap, her face a study in gentle attentiveness. She noted the way Diego's fingers traced the rim of his cup, a restless gesture, and the slight hesitation before he spoke of the map. "Trust," she said softly, "is a rare commodity on such ventures. Tell me, Mr. Alvarez, what was the expedition like before Captain Hargreaves vanished?" Diego's gaze lifted, meeting hers briefly before settling on the window. "Hard," he said. "The jungle does not forgive. We were 5. Hargreaves, Eliza Thorne, 2 porters, and me. Sir Henry stayed at the base camp, sending supplies. Marcus Vane. He was not with us, but I felt his shadow, rumors of his men in the villages. We trekked for weeks, cutting through vines, wading rivers. Hargreaves was strong, but the map made him obsessed. He would sit by the fire, tracing its lines, muttering words I could not hear. Eliza tried to calm him, but he pushed her away. The porters, they whispered of curses, of the Corazon Verde swallowing those who sought it. Miss Marple's lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. Curses are often stories men tell to explain their fears, she said. What happened on the night he disappeared, Mr. Alvarez? You said you were scouting ahead. Can you describe it? Diego's scar twitched as if the memory stirred it. It was near the valley of the temple, he said. The air was thick, the stars hidden by clouds. Hargreaves wanted to reach the temple by dawn. I told him the path was dangerous, narrow trails, quicksand in the lowlands. He insisted I scout ahead, find a safe route. I left at dusk, alone, with my machete and a lantern. The jungle is loud at night, frogs, insects, the scream of a jaguar. I marked a path, checked for traps, natural ones, you understand. Loose rocks, soft ground. It took hours. When I returned, just before dawn, the camp was wrong. His tent was slashed, his pack gone. Eliza was shouting his name, the porters praying. No blood, no footprints, just nothing. Miss Marple tilted her head, her eyes never leaving his face. Nothing is a curious thing, Mr. Alvarez. In my village, when something vanishes, a letter, a trinket, there's always a trace, if one looks closely. You found no trace at all? Diego's hands stilled on the cup, his knuckles whitening. The jungle eats traces, he said, his voice tight. Rain falls, mud shifts. But I looked, señorita. I searched the camp, the trails, the riverbank. Nothing but broken branches, and those could be from anything. Wind, animals. Eliza said she'd gone for water, came back to that chaos. I thought maybe he wandered off, followed the map alone. But Hargreaves was not so foolish. He knew the jungle's dangers. Raymond leaned forward, his writer's instinct for drama surfacing. And the map? Was it with him? Did you ever see it clearly? Diego's eyes flicked to Raymond, then back to the cup. He kept it in a leather pouch, tied to his belt. I saw it only in glimpses. Old parchment, strange symbols, a path to the temple. That night, the pouch was gone too. If he took it, the jungle took it with him. Miss Marple's fingers brushed the edge of her handbag, where her notebook lay. You mentioned the camp was wrong, she said. Can you describe that? A torn tent, you said, but what else? Diego hesitated, his scar deepening in the light. The fire was out, which was strange. Hargreaves always kept it burning. His bedroll was half out of the tent, like he'd been dragged or ran. Eliza's gear was untouched, the porter's too. Only his things were scattered. I thought, maybe a fight, but there was no sign of another person. No tracks, no blood, as I said, just wrong. Miss Marple nodded, her mind filing away the details, the slashed tent, the extinguished fire, the missing pouch. And the porters? Did they see anything before you returned? They were asleep, Diego said quickly. They woke when Eliza shouted. They were good men, locals, but afraid. They spoke of spirits, but I do not believe in such things. I believe in what I see, mud, vines, danger. And Marcus Vane, Miss Marple said, her voice gentle as a breeze. You mentioned his shadow. Did you see him or his men near your camp? Diego's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. Not near the camp, no. But in the villages before we left, I heard of him. Asking questions, buying supplies. He knew Hargreaves was close to the temple. A man like Vane, he does not sit idle when treasure is near. He paused, then added, But I saw no one that night. Only the jungle. Raymond glanced at Miss Marple, his eyebrow raised, but she gave no sign of her thoughts. Instead, she asked, Mr. Alvarez, you've guided many expeditions, I presume. Have you ever seen a man vanish so completely? Diego's gaze dropped to his hands, his voice low. Once, a climber fell into a ravine. We found his body days later. But Hargreaves? Number it is. Unnatural. Like the jungle wanted him gone. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and for a moment she saw not fear, but a flicker of something else. Guilt, perhaps, or defiance. Miss Marple smiled, a small, disarming smile. "The jungle is indeed a vast place," she said. "In St. Mary Mead, we have no jungles, but we have secrets. A missing letter, a stolen brooch. They always leave a trace, even if it's only in the eyes of those who know. Thank you, Mr. Alvarez, for your candor." Diego stood, his movements abrupt, as if eager to escape the room's confines. "I have told you what I know," he said, nodding to Raymond. "If you find answers, tell me. Hargreaves was a good man." He left, his boots heavy on the stairs, and Miss Marple watched him go, her mind turning over his words like stones in a stream. "Well, Aunt Jane," Raymond said, leaning back, "what do you make of him?" "A rough sort, but he seems straight enough." Miss Marple picked up her knitting, the needles resuming their rhythm. "He is a man of the jungle, as he says," she replied, "but even the jungle has paths, and paths have makers. His hands, Raymond, did you notice how they moved? Restless, like a man who's held a secret too long. And his scar? It tells a story he hasn't shared." She paused, her eyes distant. "In St. Mary Mead, our butcher's boy once hid a stolen pie. His hands gave him away, always fidgeting. Mr. Alvarez's story is clear, but it has edges, like a torn page." Raymond grinned, accustomed to his aunt's village analogies. "You think he's lying?" "Not lying, perhaps," she said, her needles clicking. "But not telling all. The camp, the fire, the pouch, small things. But they matter. A man like Diego Alvarez knows the jungle's ways. If Hargreaves vanished, he saw more than he claims. We shall see what the others say." As the morning light shifted, casting new shadows across the room, Miss Marple's thoughts lingered on Diego's scar, his restless hands, his quick dismissal of the porter's fears. "The jungle," she murmured, "is a mirror. It shows what men bring to it, courage, greed, or guilt." She tucked her knitting into her bag, ready for the next thread in the tapestry of Captain Hargreaves's disappearance. Chapter 4. The Partner's Promise. The following afternoon, Miss Jane Marple sat in Raymond West's Bloomsbury sitting room, the pale light of a London drizzle filtering through the tall windows. Her knitting lay untouched on the side table, a rare lapse, as she prepared to meet Eliza Thorne, Captain Hargreaves's treasure-hunting partner. The fire in the grate crackled softly, its warmth a counterpoint to the chill seeping through the glass. Raymond, ever the attentive host, had arranged for Eliza to visit alone, sensing his aunt's preference for quiet, unhurried conversations. Miss Marple's notebook rested in her lap, its pages already dotted with observations from Diego Alvarez's account. She adjusted her spectacles, her blue eyes calm but alert, like a gardener inspecting a rose bed for signs of blight. "A partner," she murmured to herself, "is bound by trust or broken by it." Eliza Thorne arrived promptly, her knock firm, her presence as brisk as the autumn air. She was a woman of action, her lean frame clad in a practical gray sweater and trousers, her sun-bleached hair tied back with a simple cord. The silver locket at her throat caught the firelight, a small but persistent detail that Miss Marple noted as Eliza took a seat across from her. Raymond offered tea, which she declined with a quick shake of her head, her gray eyes meeting Miss Marple's with a directness that bordered on defiance. "I'm here to help, Miss Marple," she said, her voice steady, almost clipped. "Richard was my partner. I owe him answers, if there are any to be found." Miss Marple smiled, her expression as gentle as a village vicar's, but her mind was already tracing the lines of Eliza's posture, the squared shoulders, the hands clasped too tightly in her lap. "I'm grateful for your time, Miss Thorne," she said. "In St. Mary Mead, we rarely hear of adventures like yours, but we know something of loyalty. Tell me about Captain Hargreaves and your work together. What sort of man was he?" Eliza's gaze softened, though her mouth remained a firm line. "Richard was the best kind of man for this work, brave, sharp, never one to back down. We met 10 years ago in Cairo, chasing a lead on a pharaoh's lost tomb. I was a cartographer then, mapping ruins for a university. He saw my sketches and said I had an eye for the land, not just paper. We've been partners since, deserts, mountains, jungles, always splitting the finds, fair and square. He wasn't just after gold. It was the hunt, the puzzle of it. This time, though, the emerald of the Andes. It consumed him." Miss Marple nodded, her hands resting lightly on her notebook. "The map, I presume, was part of that puzzle. Mr. Alvarez mentioned it was precious to Captain Hargreaves. Did you see it often?" Eliza's fingers brushed the locket, a fleeting gesture, before she answered. "Often enough, but Richard guarded it like a secret. It was old, brittle, covered in symbols. Incan, he thought, though I'm no expert. He'd spread it out at night under lantern light, tracing paths to the Corazon Verde. He said it was the key to everything, but he never let me study it long. 'Eliza,' he'd say, 'we'll share the treasure, not the map.' I trusted him. That was our deal." Her voice held a trace of bitterness, quickly masked, and Miss Marple noted the way her eyes flicked to the window, as if seeking escape. "Trust is a fine foundation," Miss Marple said gently. "Tell me about the night he vanished. Mr. Alvarez described a camp in disarray. What did you see?" Eliza leaned back, her hands unclenching slightly, though her gaze remained steady. "It was late, near midnight. We'd camped in a valley, close to where the map pointed. The air was heavy, like a storm was coming, though the sky was clear. Richard was in his tent, poring over the map as usual. He was restless, muttering about a symbol. A spiral, he called it, like a snake's coil. I told him to rest, but he waved me off. We needed water for the morning, so I took a canteen and went to the stream, maybe a 10-minute walk. I heard nothing, no shouts, no struggle. When I got back, the camp was a wreck. His tent was torn, the flap hanging like it had been slashed. His bedroll was half out, his lantern tipped over, cold. The map, the pouch, gone. I called for him, searched the clearing, but it was like he'd never been there." Miss Marple's eyes narrowed slightly, though her smile remained. "A 10-minute walk, you say, and no one else was about? The porters, perhaps?" Eliza shook her head. "They were asleep in their tent. Diego was off scouting like he said. I woke the porters when I saw the camp, but they were as confused as me. They're locals, good at their work, but they were spooked, talking about spirits. I don't hold with that. Richard didn't wander off. He knew better. Someone, or something, took him." Her voice was firm, but her fingers touched the locket again, and Miss Marple wondered what it held. A memory, a promise, or something heavier. "Did you notice anything specific in the camp's disarray?" Miss Marple asked. "A detail, perhaps, that struck you as odd?" Eliza paused, her brow furrowing. "The fire was out," she said slowly. "Richard always kept it going, even at night, said it kept animals away. But the ashes were cold, like it had been doused. And his boots, They were by the tent, laced up, not scattered like the rest. It didn't make sense. If he'd run or been dragged, why leave his boots? Her eyes met Miss Marple's, a flicker of doubt in them, as if she'd only now questioned the scene. Miss Marple jotted a note in her book, her handwriting small and precise. "Boots are a curious detail," she said. "In St. Mary Mead, when our gardener misplaced his spade, it was because someone borrowed it for their own purpose. Small things, Miss Thorne, often point to larger truths. Did you suspect anyone? Mr. Vane, perhaps, or even Sir Henry?" Eliza's lips tightened. "Marcus Vane was sniffing around. I know that. Richard caught wind of him in a village, buying supplies, asking about our route. He's a charmer, but ruthless. Wouldn't surprise me if he trailed us. Sir Henry, though, he was at the base camp, counting his money, not his courage. He'd never set foot in that jungle. As for Diego," she hesitated, her fingers stilling on the locket. "He's a good guide, but he and Richard argued sometimes, over the map, the pace. I don't think he'd betray us, but he's a hard man to read." Miss Marple tilted her head, her voice soft. "Arguments can reveal much. What did they argue about exactly?" Eliza shrugged, but the gesture was stiff. "The map, mostly. Diego wanted to see it, said he needed it to plan routes. Richard wouldn't budge, said a guide follows, not leads. It got heated once or twice, but that's just how expeditions go. Pressure builds, tempers flare." Her eyes dropped to her hands, and Miss Marple noted the faint calluses on her fingers, the mark of a woman who'd held ropes and climbed cliffs alongside Hargreaves. "You and Captain Hargreaves," Miss Marple said, her tone almost conversational. "You shared a great deal. Did he ever speak of his fears, his suspicions?" Eliza's gaze sharpened, then softened, as if caught off guard. "He was worried about Vane," she admitted. "Said he'd heard Marcus was closer than we thought, maybe even had spies in the villages. But Richard wasn't afraid, not really. He was too stubborn for that. He'd joke about the Emerald's curse, but it was just talk. The only thing he feared was losing the map. It was his obsession, his legacy." Her voice caught just for a moment, and she touched the locket again, her fingers lingering. Miss Marple closed her notebook, her smile warm, but her eyes keen. "Thank you, Miss Thorne. You've painted a vivid picture. In my village, when a thing goes missing, it's often because someone wanted it more than its owner. I wonder what Captain Hargreaves's map meant to those around him." Eliza stood, her movements brisk again, as if shaking off the weight of memory. "If you find out what happened to Richard," she said, "tell me. He deserved better than that jungle." She left, her footsteps quick on the stairs, and Miss Marple sat back, her mind sifting through Eliza's words like a seamstress sorting threads. "Well, Aunt Jane," Raymond said, entering from the next room where he'd been listening. "She's a tough one. Do you buy her story?" Miss Marple picked up her knitting, the needles clicking once more. "Her story is clear, Raymond, like a well-drawn map. But maps have hidden paths. The boots, the fire, the locket, small things. But they don't fit neatly. In St. Mary Mead, our postmistress once kept a letter back, out of loyalty to a friend. Loyalty, I find, can hide other motives. Love, perhaps, or greed." She paused, her eyes distant. "Miss Thorne loved her partner, I think, but love can blind as much as it binds." Raymond grinned, leaning against the doorframe. "You're seeing secrets everywhere, Aunt Jane." "Not everywhere," she said, her needles steady. "Only where they're buried. And Miss Thorne, I suspect, is burying something. Whether it's guilt or grief, we shall see. As the drizzle outside thickened, Miss Marple's thoughts turned to the locket, the boots, and the cold ashes of a fire, each a clue to the puzzle of Captain Hargreaves's vanishing. Chapter 5. The Funder's Facade. The late afternoon light in Raymond West's Bloomsbury flat had softened to a golden haze, casting long shadows across the room where Miss Jane Marple sat, her knitting needles paused in her lap. The air held a faint chill, despite the fire crackling in the grate, and the scent of Raymond's earlier coffee lingered, mingling with the polish of the mahogany table. The interviews with Diego Alvarez and Eliza Thorne had sharpened Miss Marple's sense of the puzzle surrounding Captain Richard Hargreaves's disappearance, each account adding a piece to the mosaic, yet none completing it. Now, as the clock ticked toward 4, Sir Henry Winthrop, the expedition's funder, was due to face her gentle but unrelenting scrutiny. Miss Marple adjusted her spectacles, her blue eyes calm but alert, like a village pond hiding depths beneath its surface. Money, she thought, is a motive as old as time, and men who wield it often wear masks. Raymond ushered Sir Henry into the sitting room with a flourish that bordered on theatrical, his writer's flair undimmed by the day's somber proceedings. "Aunt Jane," he said, gesturing to the portly figure in a tailored suit. "Sir Henry Winthrop, the man who made Hargreaves' quest possible. He's eager to shed light on the matter, aren't you, Sir Henry?" His tone was light, but Miss Marple caught the glint of mischief in his eyes, as if he anticipated the clash between her quiet probing and Sir Henry's bluster. Sir Henry settled into an armchair with the air of a man accustomed to occupying space, his florid cheeks glowing in the firelight, his gold watch catching the gleam as he adjusted his cuffs. "Miss Marple," he boomed, his voice filling the room like a pronouncement from a pulpit. "A pleasure, though I confess I'm puzzled by this summons. I'm a scholar, not a sleuth. My role was to fund Hargreaves's venture, not to traipse through jungles or unravel mysteries." His handshake was firm but perfunctory, and Miss Marple noted the sheen of his manicured nails, the faint scent of expensive cologne. A man of means, she thought, but means come with expectations. "Thank you for coming, Sir Henry," she said, her voice as soft as the wool in her lap. "It's a great help to hear from those who supported Captain Hargreaves. Your investment must have been considerable, and his loss must weigh heavily." Sir Henry's chest puffed out, though his eyes flickered with something less certain. Irritation, perhaps, or unease. "Considerable, yes," he said. "I funded the expedition to the tune of thousands, supplies, porters, equipment, all for the pursuit of knowledge, mind you. The Emerald of the Andes is a historical artifact, not some bauble for profit. Hargreaves was the man for the job, bold, experienced. His disappearance is a tragedy, but jungles are treacherous. I warned him, you know, about the risks." Miss Marple nodded, her hands folded neatly, her gaze mild but unwavering. "Indeed, jungles are unpredictable," she said. "In St. Mary Mead, we've no jungles, but we've our own risks, missteps, misunderstandings. You were at the base camp, I understand, when Captain Hargreaves vanished. Could you tell us about that?" Sir Henry cleared his throat, his fingers brushing the gold watch at his wrist, its ticking a faint metronome in the quiet room. "Quite right," he said. "I stayed at the base camp, a sensible distance from the jungle's perils. My role was oversight, ensuring funds were used wisely, coordinating supplies. The camp was basic but secure, near a village with a radio for communication. Hargreaves sent updates, though they were sporadic, all about trails and temples. The last message came 3 weeks into the trek, something about nearing the Corazon Verde. Then, nothing. The next I heard was from Diego, via radio, saying Hargreaves was gone, the camp in chaos. I organized a search party, of course, but the jungle's a beast. No trace of him. Raymond, perched on the edge of his chair, tapped his pen against his notebook. "No trace at all?" he asked. "That's a bit odd, isn't it? A man like Hargreaves, with his experience, surely there'd be something, a clue?" Sir Henry's cheeks reddened, his voice rising. "You think I didn't try to find him? I poured more money into that search, guides, trackers, even a helicopter when the terrain allowed. The jungle doesn't give up its secrets easily. Diego said the camp was torn apart, no tracks, no blood. Eliza was half mad, shouting for him. What more could I do from miles away?" Miss Marple's lips curved faintly, a gesture so subtle it might have passed for a smile. "Distance does complicate matters," she said. "But money, Sir Henry, has a way of bridging gaps. You mentioned the emerald as a historical artifact. Did you hope to see it? Perhaps display it in a museum?" Sir Henry's eyes narrowed, though his tone remained hearty. "Naturally, I'd have liked to see it. Proof of my investment, you understand. My interest is in preserving history, not hoarding treasure. Hargreaves knew that. He was to bring the emerald to me for study, documentation. Profit was never my aim." His fingers strayed to his watch again, and Miss Marple noted the gesture, as habitual as a tic, and the slight sheen of sweat on his brow, despite the room's cool air. "And the map," she said, her voice gentle but precise, like a needle threading through fabric. "Did Captain Hargreaves share it with you? It seems to have been his guiding star." Sir Henry shifted in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. "The map?" "He was cagey about it, showed me only a sketch. A rough thing, lines and symbols, some nonsense about a star and a temple. Said it was too valuable to share fully. I didn't press. My job was to fund, not to meddle." His tone was dismissive, but Miss Marple caught the edge of frustration, as if being kept at arm's length had rankled. Raymond leaned forward, his eyes bright with curiosity. "And Marcus Vane? You must have known he was in the area, chasing the same prize. Did you ever deal with him?" Sir Henry's face darkened, his voice dropping to a grumble. "Vane's a vulture, circling other men's work. I knew he was sniffing around. Hargreaves mentioned it, said Vane had been asking questions in Quito. I never met the man myself, but I wouldn't put it past him to cause trouble. Still, he was miles away by all accounts. My focus was on Hargreaves, not his rivals." Miss Marple tilted her head, her gaze lingering on Sir Henry's watch, its gold face gleaming like a small sun. "In my village," she said, "we once had a gentleman who funded the church roof, but he expected his name on a plaque. Investments, I find, often come with expectations, even if unspoken. Did you have expectations of Captain Hargreaves, Sir Henry?" The question hung in the air, and Sir Henry's cheeks flushed deeper, his fingers tightening on the watch. "Expectations? Only that he'd do his job," he said, his voice sharp. "I gave him the means to find the emerald, and I expected results. Scholarly results, mind you. If he failed, that's on him, not me." He paused, then added, "Though I'll admit, I didn't expect him to vanish like some blasted ghost." Miss Marple nodded, her expression one of quiet understanding, though her mind was racing. The watch, the bluster, the insistence on scholarly motives, she filed them away like entries in her notebook. "And the others?" she said. "Diego and Eliza. Did they seem trustworthy to you?" Sir Henry snorted, leaning back. "Diego's a rough sort, but he knows his trade. Eliza's loyal to Hargreaves, maybe too loyal. They were competent, both of them. If there was foul play, I'd look elsewhere. Vane, perhaps, or some local brigands. But I was at the base camp, Miss Marple. I saw nothing, heard nothing, until it was too late." She smiled, a small, disarming smile. "Of course," she said. "Distance can be a shield, can't it? In St. Mary Mead, our postmaster once claimed he knew nothing of a missing parcel, but his eyes told a different story. Thank you, Sir Henry, for your time." Sir Henry rose, his bulk casting a shadow across the table. "I hope you find answers," he said, his tone gruff but not unkind. "Hargreaves was a good man, for all his stubbornness." He nodded to Raymond, then strode out, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. Raymond closed his notebook, his grin wide. "What a character," he said. "All that talk of scholarship, but he's got the look of a man who'd sell his grandmother for that emerald. Did you see that watch? Gaudy as anything." Miss Marple picked up her knitting, the needles resuming their steady rhythm. "Gaudy, yes," she said, "and telling. In St. Mary Mead, our vicar's wife once bought a new hat, far too fine for her means, and it spoke of ambitions she wouldn't admit. Sir Henry's watch, his sweat, his bluster. They speak of a man who invested more than money. He wanted the emerald, Raymond, not just for history, but for himself. And that distance, he claims, it's a convenient wall to hide behind." She paused, her eyes distant. The map, the camp, the silence, they all point to something closer, something human. Sir Henry may have been miles away, but money has long arms. We shall see what Marcus Vane has to say. Her needles clicked on, weaving the threads of a mystery that grew ever more tangled. Chapter 6. The Rival's Charm. The evening had settled over Raymond. West's Bloomsbury flat, the gas lamps outside casting a soft glow through the windows, their light mingling with the flicker of the fire in the grate. Miss Jane Marple sat in her usual chair, her knitting needles idle for the moment, her small notebook open on the table beside her. The interviews with Diego Alvarez, Eliza Thorne, and Sir Henry Winthrop had painted a vivid, if incomplete, picture of Captain Richard Hargreaves's final days, each account laced with its own tensions and omissions. Now, as the clock chimed 7, Marcus Vane, the rival treasure hunter, was due to face her scrutiny. Miss Marple's blue eyes, serene behind her spectacles, held a quiet alertness, like a village cat watching a sparrow. Charm, she thought, is a dangerous weapon, for it disarms before it deceives. Raymond ushered Marcus into the sitting room with a grin that suggested he relished the prospect of this encounter. "Aunt Jane," he said, his voice bright with anticipation, "allow me to present Marcus Vane, the man who gave Hargreaves a run for his money. He's promised to be candid, haven't you, Vane?" His tone was teasing, but Miss Marple caught the undercurrent of skepticism, as if Raymond sensed the polished surface of their guest hid sharper edges. Marcus Vane entered with the easy grace of a man accustomed to winning allies, his tall frame clad in a well-cut jacket, his dark hair swept back, and his hazel eyes sparkling with a warmth that seemed almost too perfect. He bowed slightly, taking Miss Marple's hand with a smile that could have melted frost. "Miss Marple," he said, his voice smooth as polished stone, A pleasure to meet someone with such a reputation for insight. I'm only a competitor, not a villain, but I'll answer your questions as best I can." His handshake was firm, his gaze direct, yet Miss Marple noted the way. His eyes flicked briefly to Raymond, as if gauging the room's dynamics. A man who smiles so readily, she thought, knows the value of a mask. They settled around the table, Raymond pouring tea with a flourish, the clink of porcelain, a soft counterpoint to the crackling fire. Marcus accepted his cup with a nod, his posture relaxed but alert, like a fencer awaiting the first move. Miss Marple sipped her tea, her hands folded neatly, her expression one of gentle curiosity. "Mr. Vane," she began, her voice soft but precise, "you were not part of Captain Hargreaves's expedition, yet you were in the same jungle, seeking the same prize. That must have created tension." Marcus's smile widened, a flash of white teeth that seemed to light the room. "Tension? Perhaps, Miss Marple, but only the kind that sharpens the game. Richard Hargreaves was a legend, bold, relentless. I admired him, even if we were rivals. The Emerald of the Andes was a prize worth chasing, and I won't deny I wanted it. But I kept my distance. My team was camped miles away, following our own leads. His disappearance was as much a shock to me as to anyone." Raymond leaned forward, his pen poised over his notebook, his eyes gleaming with interest. "Miles away, you say? Yet you knew Hargreaves was close to the temple. How'd you manage that, with all that jungle between you?" Marcus chuckled, a low, easy sound, but Miss Marple caught the brief tightening of his fingers around the teacup. "The jungle has ears, Mr. West," he said. "Villagers talk, porters gossip. I'd heard Hargreaves was making progress. Rumors of a map, a temple called Corazon Verde. My team was working from old journals, less precise than his map, I'll admit. We were in the same region, yes, but I never saw his camp, never crossed his path. When I heard he'd vanished, I was in a village, trading for supplies. My men can confirm it." Miss Marple tilted her head, her gaze lingering on Marcus's hands, which were well-groomed but bore faint calluses, as if accustomed to both a pen and a rope. "A rival's path often runs parallel," she said, "even if it doesn't cross. Tell me, Mr. Vane, what did you know of Captain Hargreaves's map? It seems to have been the heart of his quest." Marcus leaned back, his smile unwavering, though his eyes narrowed slightly, as if measuring her question. "The map? Only what the rumors said, old, cryptic, pointing to the temple. Hargreaves was tight-lipped, as any treasure hunter would be. I never saw it, though I'd have given much for a glimpse. My own leads were vaguer, sketches from a missionary's diary, tales of a green stone guarded by spirits. I figured Hargreaves had the better guide, with Diego Alvarez leading the way." His voice was smooth, but Miss Marple noted the way he emphasized Diego's name, as if planting a seed. "In St. Mary Mead," she said, her tone as gentle as a breeze. "We once had two gardeners competing for the best roses. One always seemed to know the other's plans, as if he'd peeked over the hedge. Did you ever try to learn more about Hargreaves's plans, perhaps through those village rumors?" Marcus's laugh was light, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Peek over the hedge. A charming image, Miss Marple, but I'm no sneak. I asked questions, sure. Every hunter does. The locals knew Hargreaves was after something big. They'd seen him with that leather pouch, always checking it. But I kept to my own trail. Spying's a risky game, and I prefer to play fair." His smile was disarming, yet Miss Marple caught the faint shift in his posture, a subtle tension, like a cat preparing to spring. Raymond scribbled a note, his brow furrowed. "Fair or not," he said, "you were after the same prize. Did you ever meet Hargreaves in the jungle, even by chance?" Marcus shook his head, his expression earnest. "Never. Our paths didn't cross. I was 10 miles north, near a river bend, when he vanished. My team was small. 2 guides, a cook, myself. We were mapping our own route, chasing shadows of that temple. When the news reached us, I sent a man to offer help, but Diego said there was nothing to find. No tracks, no sign, just a torn camp and a missing man." Miss Marple's fingers brushed the edge of her notebook, her mind cataloging Marcus's words, the distance, the alibi, the offer of help. "A torn camp," she said, "is a curious thing. Mr. Alvarez mentioned a slashed tent, an extinguished fire. Miss Thorne spoke of a knife, left open. You heard of this chaos. Did it strike you as unusual for a man like Hargreaves?" Marcus's smile faltered, just for a moment before returning. "Unusual? Yes. Hargreaves was no fool. He'd have kept his camp tight, his fire lit. A slashed tent sounds like trouble, maybe an animal, maybe something else. But I wasn't there, Miss Marple. I only heard the story secondhand, from shaken porters and a grim-faced Diego." He paused, then added, "If I were to guess, I'd say someone wanted that map. Hargreaves guarded it like a holy relic." Miss Marple nodded, her eyes never leaving his face. "A map is a powerful thing," she said. "In my village, a lost letter once caused such a stir because it held a secret someone wanted. You mentioned Diego Alvarez. Did you know him well, before or during the expedition?" Marcus's gaze flicked to the fire, his fingers tapping lightly on the teacup. "Diego? By reputation. He's a legend in those parts, knows every trail, every danger. Hargreaves was lucky to have him. I tried to hire him once, years ago, but he's loyal to his own code. I saw him in Quito before the expedition, bargaining for supplies. He didn't say much, but his eyes were sharp, always watching. If anyone knows what happened, it's Diego." His tone was casual, but Miss Marple noted the subtle shift, the way he deflected attention. "And Sir Henry Winthrop," she said, her voice soft but probing. "As the funder, he must have had an interest in your progress, as well as Hargreaves. Did you ever communicate with him?" Marcus's smile returned, a touch cooler now. "Sir Henry? I knew of him. Rich, loud, likes his name on things. He never contacted me, and I had no reason to reach out. My funding came from other sources. Sir Henry was Hargreaves's man, and I was the outsider. If he suspected me of meddling, he never said so." His words were smooth, but Miss Marple caught the faint hesitation, as if he'd chosen them with care. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze gentle but unyielding. "In St. Mary Mead, Mr. Vane, we once had a young man who charmed everyone at the fete, but his charm hid a theft. You speak of distance, of fairness, but rivalry is a fire that burns close. Did you ever feel that fire, perhaps enough to follow Hargreaves's trail?" Marcus's eyes met hers, and for a moment the charm slipped, revealing a flash of steel. "Follow him? No, Miss Marple. I'm a hunter, not a hound. I chased the emerald, not Hargreaves. If I'd been close enough to see his camp, I'd have been close enough to find the temple myself. But I didn't. I was too late, and now he's gone." His voice was steady, but Miss Marple noted the way. His fingers tightened on the cup, the brief clench of his jaw. Raymond closed his notebook, his grin undimmed. "Quite a story," he said. "You're a smooth one, Vane, but Aunt Jane's got a nose for secrets. Anything you'd like to add before we let you go?" Marcus stood, his smile back in place, though it seemed a shade less bright. "Only that I wish Hargreaves had found his prize," he said. "The jungle's no place for a man to vanish. If you find answers, Miss Marple, I'd be curious to hear them." He bowed again, his exit as graceful as his entrance, though his footsteps on the stairs carried a hint of haste. Raymond turned to Miss Marple, his eyes alight. "Well, Aunt Jane, he's a charmer, but I wouldn't trust him with a shilling. Did you see how he dodged that question about Diego?" Miss Marple picked up her knitting, the needles resuming their quiet rhythm. "Charm is a curtain, Raymond," she said, "and curtains hide what's behind. Mr. Vane's story is polished, but it has cracks. His hands, his glance at the fire, his careful words about Diego. In St. Mary Mead, our baker's boy once smiled his way out of trouble, but his eyes gave him away. Marcus Vane knows more than he says, and his distance may not be as great as he claims." She paused, her gaze distant. The map, the camp, the rivalry, they all point to a man who was closer than he admits. We shall see what the map itself reveals. Her needles clicked on, weaving not just wool, but the delicate threads of a mystery growing ever more intricate. Chapter 7. The Map's Secret. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of Raymond West's Bloomsbury flat, casting delicate patterns across the sitting room where Miss Jane Marple sat, her knitting needles stilled in her lap. The interviews with Diego Alvarez, Eliza Thorne, Sir Henry Winthrop, and Marcus Vane had woven a tapestry of half-truths and hidden motives, each thread tightening the knot of Captain Richard Hargreaves's disappearance. Yet the heart of the mystery, Miss Marple felt, lay not in their words, but in the object that had driven them all, the map to the Emerald of the Andes. Raymond had promised to procure a copy from Hargreaves's solicitor, and now, as the clock struck 10, a package arrived, its contents promising to shed light on the shadowed jungle. Miss Marple's blue eyes, calm behind her spectacles, gleamed with quiet anticipation. A map, she thought, is a story in lines and symbols, and stories always reveal their teller. Raymond entered, his face alight with the excitement of a man who sensed a clue. "Aunt Jane," he said, placing a sealed envelope on the table. The solicitor was reluctant, but I persuaded him. This is a photograph of Hargreaves's map, or as much of it as he'd shared. The original, they say, went with him into the jungle. He slit the envelope with a letter opener, revealing a glossy print of a tattered parchment, its edges frayed, its surface etched with cryptic lines and symbols. Miss Marple leaned forward, her hands folded neatly, her gaze sharpening as she studied the image. The map was a faded relic, its parchment yellowed, its ink blurred by time. A winding path snaked through jagged lines that suggested mountains, dotted with symbols, a star, a crescent, a series of concentric circles. At its center, marked in bold script, was Corazon Verde, the green heart, surrounded by what looked like a maze of trails. Notes in Hargreaves's hand, scrawled in the margins, mentioned a shadow at noon and a gate of stone. Miss Marple's fingers traced the air above the photograph, not touching it, as if respecting its secrets. "A beautiful thing," she said softly, "but dangerous, like a rose with thorns." Raymond, hovering at her side, peered at the map with a writer's curiosity. "It's like something out of a novel," he said. "All those symbols, do you think they're a code? Hargreaves was obsessed with it by all accounts. Diego said he guarded it like a relic. Eliza said he muttered over it. Sir Henry saw only a sketch and—" Vain. Well, he'd have killed for a peek, wouldn't he? Miss Marple's lips curved faintly, a gesture that might have been a smile. Perhaps, she said, but killing for a map is a crude solution. In St. Mary Mead, our vicar once found an old deed in the church archives, full of odd marks. It wasn't the marks that mattered, but who wanted them. This map, Raymond, is not just a guide to a temple. It's a mirror reflecting the desires of those who sought it. She paused, her eyes lingering on the star symbol, its lines sharp against the faded ink. Let us consider what it shows us. She rose, moving to the window where the light was stronger, the photograph in her hands. The map's details were sparse, yet deliberate, as if Hargreaves had copied only what was essential. The path to Corazon Verde wound through a valley flanked by cliffs, with a river marked in sinuous blue. The symbols, she noted, were not random. They suggested a sequence, a puzzle to be solved. A star and a shadow, she murmured, recalling Eliza's mention of Hargreaves's mutterings. A gate of stone. These are not just directions, they're a test. Raymond joined her, his notebook open, his pen poised. A test? You mean like a riddle? Hargreaves was no scholar, but he was clever. Do you think he cracked it before he vanished? Miss Marple's gaze remained on the map, her mind sifting through the suspects' stories. Diego's restless hands, Eliza's locket, Sir Henry's watch, Marcus's charm. Each had spoken of the map with a mix of reverence and frustration. He may have, she said, or he may have come too close. A man who solves a riddle becomes a target, Raymond. In my village, a boy once found a hidden cache of coins, and the news spread before he could claim it. The map was Hargreaves's secret, but secrets are heavy to carry alone. She returned to her chair, setting the photograph on the table, her fingers brushing her notebook. Let us think of the night he vanished, she said. Diego was scouting, Eliza was fetching water, Sir Henry was at the base camp. Marcus claims he was miles away. Yet the camp was torn, the fire out, the map gone. This map, or its original, was with Hargreaves. Tied to his belt, Eliza said. Whoever took it knew its value. Raymond frowned, tapping his pen. But who? Diego knew the jungle, could have doubled back. Eliza was closest, but she seems loyal. Sir Henry's too far unless he hired someone. Vane's the obvious suspect. He's a rival, hungry for the emerald. But he's slick, Aunt Jane. His alibi's tight. Miss Marple's needles resumed their quiet clicking, a rhythm that steadied her thoughts. Alibis are like fences, Raymond, she said. They look solid, but there's always a gap. Mr. Vane's charm is his fence, but his eyes betray him. They watch too closely, like our baker's boy when he'd taken a loaf. Diego's hands, Eliza's locket, Sir Henry's watch, they all speak of secrets. But the map speaks loudest. It was not just a guide to the emerald. It was Hargreaves' power, and someone wanted that power. She leaned forward, her gaze returning to the photograph. The star symbol caught her eye again, its lines radiating like a beacon. In St. Mary Mead, she said, our postmistress once hid a letter, thinking it harmless, but it held a will that changed a family's fate. This map holds more than a path. It holds intent. Whoever took it, or ensured it was lost, wanted more than the emerald. They wanted control. Raymond's eyes widened, his pen pausing. Control? You mean over the expedition? Or something else? Miss Marple's smile was faint, almost wistful. Something else, perhaps. Greed, fear, betrayal. These are old motives, but they wear new faces. Diego spoke of the jungle's dangers, Eliza of Hargreaves's obsession, Sir Henry of his investment, Marcus of his distance. Yet all of them circled this map like moths to a flame. One of them, I think, came too close to the fire. She closed her notebook, her fingers lingering on its cover. "We must learn more about the temple, Raymond," she said. "The Corazon Verde is not just a place, it's a purpose. If we understand what Hargreaves sought, we may understand who sought to stop him." She paused, her eyes distant, as if seeing the jungle's shadows. "In my village, a lost ring was found under a rose bush because someone thought it safe there. The map's secret is hidden, but not lost. We shall find it in time." Raymond grinned, closing his notebook. "You're a marvel, Aunt Jane. I'll see if the solicitor has anything on the temple, old records maybe, or Hargreaves' notes. But I'll bet Vane's at the heart of this. He's too smooth by half." Miss Marple's needles clicked on, their rhythm unbroken. "Smoothness is a surface, Raymond," she said. "In St. Mary Mead, our vicar's wife once polished her silver to hide a dent, but the dent was still there. Mr. Vane's charm hides something, but so do Diego's hands, Eliza's locket, Sir Henry's watch. The map will tell us who dented it and why." Her gaze returned to the photograph, its symbols a silent challenge, as the morning light faded and the mystery deepened. Chapter 8. The Jungle's Echo. The morning air in Raymond West's Bloomsbury flat carried a crisp edge, the faint hum of London beyond the windows, a distant counterpoint to the quiet intensity within. Miss Jane Marple sat by the fire, her knitting needles resting in her lap, her small notebook open to a page filled with neat, spidery script. The photograph of Captain Richard Hargreaves's map lay on the table, its cryptic symbols, stars, crescents, and the bold script of Corazon Verde, a silent challenge to her probing mind. The interviews with Diego Alvarez, Eliza Thorne, Sir Henry Winthrop, and Marcus Vane had each added a layer to the mystery of Hargreaves's disappearance, yet the threads remained unknotted. Miss Marple's blue eyes, serene behind her spectacles, held a quiet resolve. The jungle, she thought, is a vast stage, but even vast stages hold clues, if one knows where to look. Raymond entered, his face alight with the energy of a man who thrived on puzzles. "Aunt Jane," he said, setting a stack of papers on the table. "I've got something for you. My friend Dr. Hartley, the botanist, sent these notes from his time in the Andes. He's been to those jungles, knows their tricks. I thought it might help us understand what Hargreaves faced." He paused, his grin widening. "And maybe what swallowed him." Miss Marple's lips curved faintly, a gesture that acknowledged his enthusiasm without matching it. "Swallowed is a dramatic word, Raymond," she said, reaching for the papers. "In St. Mary Mead, we once thought a child's kitten had been swallowed by the woods, but it was only hiding in a shed. Captain Hargreaves, I suspect, was not swallowed but misplaced by someone's hand." She adjusted her spectacles, her fingers brushing the botanist's notes, their pages filled with diagrams of plants and descriptions of terrain. Dr. Hartley's notes were meticulous, written in a precise hand that spoke of a man who valued order over adventure. The Andes jungle, he wrote, was a labyrinth of dangers. Quicksand pits hidden beneath leaves, cliffs that dropped without warning, rivers that swelled in sudden rains. Jaguars prowled at dusk, their eyes like lanterns in the dark, and venomous. Snakes coiled in the undergrowth. A man alone, Hartley noted, would need skill and luck to survive a night without shelter. Miss Marple's gaze lingered on this line, her mind turning to Hargreaves's experience, his map, his vanished pouch. Skill he had, she murmured, but luck, perhaps, ran out. Raymond paced, his hands clasped behind his back. Hartley's notes make it sound like a death trap, he said. Quicksand, cliffs, beasts. Hargreaves knew the risks, but to vanish without a trace? That's not bad luck, Aunt Jane. That's deliberate. Miss Marple nodded, her eyes returning to the notes. Hartley described the valley of the Corazon Verde, a place of dense vines and towering trees, where the air was thick with moisture and the ground soft with red clay. Red clay, she said softly, her memory stirring. Marcus Vane's boots, caked with red clay, had caught her eye at the first gathering, a detail that clashed with his claim of camping miles away on gray soil. She made a mental note, her fingers tapping the table. The jungle keeps its secrets, she said, but it leaves marks, like footprints in a garden. She turned to another page, where Hartley detailed the temple itself. Rumors of a stone structure, half swallowed by roots, its entrance guarded by a slab etched with a star. A gate of stone, she murmured, recalling the map's scrawled note. A star and a shadow. The symbols aligned with Hargreaves' obsession, but Hartley's notes added a grim detail. The temple was near a ravine, its edge crumbling, a trap for the unwary. A man could fall, Hartley wrote, and the jungle would hide him forever. Miss Marple's gaze sharpened, her mind weaving the map's clues with the suspects' stories. Raymond, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Doctor. Hartley's notes suggest the temple was no easy prize. Quicksand, cliffs, a ravine. Hargreaves would have needed help to navigate such a place. Diego knew the trails. Eliza knew Hargreaves's mind. Sir Henry knew the stakes. And Marcus knew the prize. One of them, I think, was closer to the temple than they admit. Raymond stopped pacing, his eyes bright with curiosity. You're thinking Vane, aren't you? That red clay on his boots. It's a dead giveaway. He said he was 10 miles away, but Hartley's notes put red clay right near the temple. He's lying, Aunt Jane. Miss Marple's needles resumed their quiet clicking, a rhythm that steadied her thoughts. Lying is a strong word, she said, but Mr. Vane's story has inconsistencies. In St. Mary Mead, our grocer's boy once claimed he'd never been near the orchard, but apple juice on his sleeve told another tale. Red clay is like that juice. It clings, but we must not leap too quickly. Diego's hands, Eliza's locket, Sir Henry's watch. They all carry marks of their own. She set the notes aside, her gaze returning to the map's photograph, its star symbol glowing in her mind. The temple, she said, was Hargreaves's goal, but it was also his danger. If he reached it or came close, someone ensured he did not return. The torn camp, the extinguished fire, the missing pouch. These are not the jungle's work, but a human's. We must consider motive, Raymond. Greed for the emerald, fear of its discovery, or perhaps something deeper, resentment, betrayal. Raymond leaned forward, his notebook open. Betrayal? You think someone in the camp turned on him? Eliza was closest. She could have staged the chaos. Or Diego, sneaking back from his scouting. Sir Henry's too far, but he could have paid someone. Vane's still my bet, though. Rivalry's a powerful motive. Miss Marple's smile was faint, almost wistful. Rivalry, yes, but so is loyalty, or greed, or fear. In my village, a woman once hid her sister's locket, not for its value, but to keep a secret it held. Eliza's locket, Diego's scar, Sir Henry's watch, Marcus's boots, they are like that locket, hiding something. The jungle's echo, Raymond, is not just its sounds, but the truths it carries back. Hargreaves's disappearance was no accident. It was a choice made by someone who knew the map's path. She rose, moving to the window, where the morning light revealed the city's rooftops, a contrast to the jungle's wild heart. "We need more, Raymond," she said. "Dr. Hartley's notes give us the stage, but not the players' hearts. Could you ask him if he heard of other expeditions, Marcus Vane's perhaps, or whispers of Sir Henry's dealings in Quito? The jungle's echo may reach further than we think." Raymond nodded, his grin undimmed. "I'll write to Hartley today, and I'll dig into Vane's movements. Someone in that village must have seen him. You're building quite a case, Aunt Jane. I'd hate to be on the wrong side of your knitting needles." Miss Marple's eyes twinkled, though her expression remained serene. "Needles are for knitting, Raymond, not for piercing. But they do help one see the pattern. The map, the temple, the red clay. They are pieces of a pattern, and someone in our circle knows how they fit. We shall find them, in time." Her needles clicked on, weaving not just wool, but the delicate threads of a mystery that grew ever clearer in the jungle's silent echo. Chapter 9. The Crack in the Facade. The evening air in Raymond West's Bloomsbury flat was heavy with the scent of wood smoke and the faint tang of London's fog, seeping through the slightly ajar window. Miss Jane Marple sat by the fire, her knitting needles idle, her small notebook open to a page dense with observations. The map's cryptic symbols, Dr. Hartley's notes on the Andes perils, and the interviews with Diego Alvarez, Eliza Thorne, Sir Henry Winthrop, and Marcus Vane had woven a complex web, each thread taut with hidden intent. Tonight, Raymond had arranged another gathering of the suspects, a dinner to test their stories under the pressure of shared company. Miss Marple's blue eyes, serene behind her spectacles, gleamed with quiet purpose. A group, she thought, reveals more than individuals, for facades crack when eyes meet. The dining room was softly lit, the table set with polished silver and crystal that caught the candlelight like stars. Raymond, ever the orchestrator, greeted his guests with a warmth that masked his probing intent. "Welcome all," he said, his voice bright as he gestured to the chairs. Aunt Jane thought a shared meal might jog memories, clarify details. "Let's eat and talk. Hargreaves deserves our best efforts." His grin was disarming, but Miss Marple noted the way his eyes flicked to each guest, as if measuring their reactions. Diego Alvarez arrived first, his leather jacket replaced by a dark shirt, his scar stark against his tanned skin. He nodded curtly, his hands restless as he took his seat, his gaze darting to the door. Eliza Thorne followed, her khaki trousers swapped for a simple dress, the silver locket still at her throat, glinting as she moved. Sir Henry Winthrop bustled in, his suit immaculate, his gold watch ticking audibly as he settled with a grunt. Marcus Vane was last, his tailored jacket and easy smile as polished as ever, though Miss Marple caught the brief tightening of his jaw as he scanned the room. A stage, she thought, and each player knows their part, but not perfectly. The meal began, the maid serving a modest roast, the clink of cutlery filling the silences between Raymond's careful questions. Miss Marple, seated at the table's end, sipped her wine, her gaze moving from face to face, noting the subtle shifts. Diego's fingers tapping table, Eliza's hand brushing her locket, Sir Henry's flush deepening with each glass, Marcus's smile unwavering, but his eyes alert. "Let us return to that night," she said, her voice gentle as a breeze. "When Captain Hargreaves vanished, Mr. Alvarez, you described the camp as wrong. Could you tell us, perhaps, what made it so, beyond the torn tent?" Diego's fork paused, his eyes narrowing. "I said before, Señorita Marple," he replied, his accent thick. "The tent was slashed, the fire out, his things scattered. It was like a storm, but no storm came. The porters were afraid, said it was spirits. I saw no footprints, no blood, only chaos." His voice was steady, but Miss Marple noted the way. His hand clenched the fork, the scar on his cheek catching the light. She turned to Eliza, her expression one of quiet sympathy. "And you, Miss Thorne, saw a knife out of its sheath. Was there anything else? A sound? A shadow that struck you?" Eliza's fingers touched her locket, a reflex she seemed unaware of. "I told you, it was a mess," she said, her tone clipped. "The knife was near the tent, blade open, like he'd dropped it. I heard nothing but the jungle, birds, insects. When I got back from the stream, it was empty, except for the chaos. I searched, called his name, but the jungle doesn't answer." Her voice held a note of defiance, but Miss Marple saw the flicker of unease in her eyes, as if the memory held more than she shared. Raymond, carving the roast, glanced at Sir Henry. "You were at the base camp, Sir Henry," he said. "Any chance you heard something on the radio before Diego's report? A hint of trouble, maybe?" Sir Henry's cheeks reddened, his watch glinting as he gestured. "Nothing but static," he said brusquely. "Hargreaves's last message was about the temple, days before. I told you, I sent a search party when I heard. The jungle's a beast, swallows men whole. I did my part." His tone was defensive, and Miss Marple noted the way. His eyes avoided Diego's, as if fearing contradiction. Marcus Vane leaned forward, his smile as smooth as the wine. "A beast indeed," he said. "I was miles away, but the news reached me through village talk. A torn camp, no tracks. It's eerie, Miss Marple. If I'd been closer, I'd have helped search, but my own trail was cold." His voice was earnest, but Miss Marple caught the way Diego's gaze sharpened at his words, a silent challenge. She set her glass down, her voice soft but deliberate. "It's curious, isn't it? How the jungle hides so much, yet leaves traces. In St. Mary Mead, a stolen bicycle was found because of mud on a boy's shoes. Dr. Hartley's notes mention red clay near the temple, Mr. Vane. Your boots, at our first meeting, had such clay. Were you closer to the Corazon Verde than you've said?" The room stilled, the clink of cutlery ceasing. Marcus's smile froze, his eyes locking with hers, a flash of something, anger perhaps, or fear, before he laughed, a light, practiced sound. "Red clay? Miss Marple, you're observant. My team crossed many trails. Clay sticks like a curse. But I was north, by the river, not near the temple. My guides could tell you. Gray soil there, mostly." His tone was smooth, but Miss Marple noted the way his hand tightened on his glass, the faint pallor beneath his tan. Diego's voice cut through, low and sharp. "Red clay is rare," he said, his eyes fixed on Marcus. "The Temple Valley has it, nowhere else in 10 miles. I saw your tracks, Vane, near a village, closer than you claim." His scar twitched, his hands clenching, and Miss Marple saw Eliza's head snap up, her locket gleaming as she leaned forward. "Tracks?" Eliza said, her voice tight. "You never mentioned tracks, Diego. You said there was nothing, no sign of anyone." Her eyes darted to Marcus, then back to Diego, a spark of suspicion flaring. Diego's jaw tightened. "I saw them later," he said, "when I searched again after the porters left. Faint, near the river, not the camp. I thought, maybe a local. But now, he trailed off, his gaze locked on Marcus, who met it with a smile that held no warmth. Sir Henry slammed his glass down, the wine sloshing. "This is nonsense," he boomed, "accusing each other like schoolboys. I was miles away funding the lot of you. If there were tracks, why didn't you report them, Alvarez? Sounds like you're hiding something yourself." His watch ticked loudly, and Miss Marple noted the sweat beading on his brow, despite the cool room. Raymond, sensing the tension, raised a hand. "Let's not lose our heads," he said, though his eyes gleamed with excitement. "Aunt Jane's just trying to piece it together. Tracks, clay, knives. What else are we missing?" Miss Marple's gaze moved from face to face, her voice gentle but unyielding. "What we miss, I think, is the why. In my village, a broken window once revealed a theft because someone wanted what was inside. The camp's chaos, the map's absence, the red clay, they point to intent. Someone wanted Captain Hargreaves gone, or his prize taken. Mr. Vane, your boots suggest proximity. Mr. Alvarez, your tracks suggest secrecy. Miss Thorne, your knife suggests a struggle. Sir Henry, your distance suggests convenience." The table fell silent, each suspect frozen, their facades cracking under her quiet scrutiny. Marcus recovered first, his smile returning, though strained. "You weave a fine tale, Miss Marple," he said, "but I'm no villain. My boots prove nothing but a hard trek. I'd wager Diego's tracks mean more. He was there, after all." Diego's hand slammed the table, his scar livid. "You lie, Vane. I guided Hargreaves, not betrayed him." Eliza's fingers gripped her locket, her eyes darting between them, while Sir Henry huffed, his watch a relentless tick in the silence. Miss Marple folded her hands, her expression serene. "Truth, like a village secret, comes out in time," she said. "Thank you all for your candor. We shall meet again. I think, when the jungle's echo speaks clearer." The dinner ended, the suspects departing with stiff nods, their masks frayed. Miss Marple's needles resumed their clicking, her mind weaving the cracks, red clay, hidden tracks, a gleaming locket, into a pattern that promised answers. If only she could find the final thread. Chapter 10. The Temple's Shadow. The morning light in Raymond West's Bloomsbury flat was pale and diffused, filtered through a veil of London fog that pressed against the windows. Miss Jane Marple sat by the fire, her knitting needles silent, her small notebook open to a page where her spidery script had grown denser, a web of observations drawn from the suspects' stories and the dinner's revelations. The map's cryptic symbols, Dr. Hartley's notes on the Andes perils, and the cracks in the suspects' facades, Diego's hidden tracks, Eliza's locket, Sir Henry's bluster, Marcus Vane's red-stained boots, had brought the mystery of Captain Richard Hargreaves' disappearance into sharper focus. Yet the truth remained elusive, hidden in the jungle's shadow. Miss Marple's blue eyes, calm behind her spectacles, held a quiet intensity. A temple, she thought, is a place of secrets, and secrets cast long shadows. Raymond entered, his face alight with the restless energy of a man sensing the climax of a story. "Aunt Jane," he said, setting a cup of tea before her. "I've heard back from Dr. Hartley. No new leads on Vane's movements, but he confirmed the temple's ravine is treacherous, crumbling edges, hidden by vines. If Hargreaves got close, he could have fallen. But you don't think it was an accident, do you?" His voice held a mix of excitement and skepticism, his writer's instinct eager for the next twist. Miss Marple sipped her tea, her gaze drifting to the photograph of Hargreaves's map, its star symbol and Corazon Verde script, a constant refrain in her thoughts. "An accident," she said softly, "is a convenient explanation, Raymond, but convenience often hides intent. In St. Mary Mead, a broken fence was once blamed on a storm until we found a hammer's mark. The torn camp, the missing map, the red clay, they are hammer marks, not the jungle's whims." She set her cup down, her fingers brushing the notebook. The temple was Hargreaves's goal, and someone ensured he did not return from it. She rose, moving to the table where the map's photograph lay beside Dr. Hartley's notes. The botanist's description of the Corazon Verde Valley, red clay, a stone gate, a ravine, aligned with the map's path, its symbols suggesting a precise route to the temple's entrance. "A star and a shadow," she murmured, recalling Hargreaves's muttered clues. "A gate of stone. Hargreaves was close, I think, perhaps too close for someone's comfort." Her mind turned to the suspects. Diego, who knew the trails; Eliza, who knew Hargreaves's mind; Sir Henry, who funded the prize; Marcus, whose boots betrayed his proximity. Raymond leaned over the table, his eyes scanning the map. "You think he reached the temple?" he asked. "Eliza said he was obsessed, muttering about a star. Diego said the camp was near the valley. If he got there, someone followed. Vane's my bet. That red clay on his boots isn't just mud, it's evidence." Miss Marple's lips curved faintly, a gesture that held no mirth. "Evidence, yes, but not proof. In my village, a girl once had paint on her hands, but it was her brother who stole the brush. Marcus Vane's boots suggest he was near the temple, but suggestion is not certainty. We must consider the others. Diego's tracks, hidden until the dinner; Eliza's knife, out of place; Sir Henry's distance, too perfect an alibi. The temple's shadow falls on them all." She returned to her chair, her notebook in hand, her thoughts weaving a theory. "Let us imagine," she said, her voice gentle but deliberate, "that Hargreaves reached the temple, or came close. The map led him to the valley, past the ravine, to the stone gate. He was skilled, cautious, but not alone. Someone followed, someone who knew the map's value or feared its success. The camp's chaos was no accident. It was a distraction, staged to suggest a struggle or a beast. But the map was taken, the fire doused, the knife left open. These are human acts, Raymond, not the jungle's." Raymond's brow furrowed, his pen tapping his notebook. "Staged? You mean someone trashed the camp to cover their tracks? But who? Eliza was there, but she seems devoted. Diego was scouting, or so he says. Sir Henry's too far, unless he hired someone. Vane's the one with motive, rivalry, greed, the works." Miss Marple's needles resumed their clicking, a rhythm that steadied her thoughts. "Motive is a tangled thing," she said. "In St. Mary Mead, a woman once broke a vase, claiming it was an accident, but she wanted to hide a letter inside. Greed is a motive, yes, but so is fear, of exposure, of loss. Marcus Vane wanted the emerald, but so did Sir Henry, for all his talk of scholarship. Eliza's loyalty may hide resentment. Diego's knowledge may hide guilt. The temple's shadow is darkest where intent meets opportunity." She paused, her gaze returning to the map. "The ravine," she said, "is the key. Dr. Hartley's notes describe it as treacherous, its edge hidden by vines. If Hargreaves reached the temple, he passed the ravine. A push, a slip, a moment of betrayal, and the jungle would hide him. The map, taken from his belt, would ensure no one followed. The camp's chaos would buy time. Raymond's eyes widened, his pen stilling. A push? You think someone killed him? Not just took the map, but made sure he was gone? That's cold, Aunt Jane. Vane's got the nerve for it. Charming, but ruthless. Those boots place him there. Miss Marple's expression remained serene, though her mind was racing. Cold, yes, she said, but human. In my village, a man once pushed another into a ditch, not to kill, but to keep a secret. Marcus Vane's boots are a clue, but not the only one. Eliza's knife suggests a moment of haste. Diego's hidden tracks suggest concealment. Sir Henry's bluster suggests a man protecting his stake. We need more, Raymond. Could Dr. Hartley learn if others saw Vane's team near the temple, or if Sir Henry sent men beyond his search party? Raymond nodded, scribbling a note. I'll write to Hartley again, and I'll check with the solicitor. Maybe Hargreaves left notes about the temple, or who he trusted. You're building a case, Aunt Jane, but it's like chasing shadows. Miss Marple's needles clicked on, her gaze distant. Shadows, yes, but they take shape in light. The temple was Hargreaves's dream, but it was also his danger. Someone stood in its shadow, watching, waiting. We shall find them, Raymond, by following the marks they left. Clay, tracks, a knife, a watch. She closed her notebook, the map's star symbol vivid in her mind, as the fog thickened outside and the mystery drew closer to its heart. Chapter 11. The Confrontation. The late afternoon light in Raymond West's Bloomsbury flat was dim, muted by the heavy fog that clung to London's streets, casting an ethereal glow through the windows. Miss Jane Marple sat at the dining table, her knitting needles still, her small notebook open to a page dense with her meticulous observations. The photograph of Captain Richard Hargreaves's map lay beside Dr. Hartley's notes, their combined weight anchoring her thoughts to the jungle's secrets. The dinner 2 evenings prior had cracked the suspects' facades. Diego's hidden tracks, Eliza's guarded locket, Sir Henry's defensive bluster, Marcus Vane's telltale red clay, revealing a pattern of deceit that pointed to the temple's shadow. Tonight, Raymond had arranged a final gathering, a confrontation to unravel the truth of Hargreaves's disappearance. Miss Marple's blue eyes, serene behind her spectacles, held a quiet determination. Truth, she thought, is like a village secret, buried, but never deep enough to stay hidden. Raymond entered, his face alight with nervous anticipation, his writer's instinct sensing the climax of a tale. Aunt Jane, he said, adjusting his tie. They're all coming. Diego, Eliza, Sir Henry, Vane. I've told them you've pieced something together, and they're edgy as cats. Hartley sent a note this morning. No new word on Vane's team, but he confirmed the ravine near the temple is a death trap. If Hargreaves fell, it's no wonder he vanished. He paused, his grin faltering. You're sure about this, aren't you? It's a bold move, stirring them up like this. Miss Marple's lips curved faintly, a gesture of calm assurance. Boldness, Raymond, is sometimes necessary to shake loose the truth. In St. Mary Mead, we once had a thief who confessed only when confronted with his own muddy boots. Tonight, we shall see whose boots betray them. She closed her notebook, her fingers brushing the map's photograph, its star symbol, a silent beacon in her mind. The suspects arrived as the clock struck 6, their entrances marked by a tension that filled the room like static. Diego Alvarez was first, his dark shirt crisp but his scar stark, his hands restless as he nodded curtly and took a seat. Eliza Thorne followed, her dress simple, her silver locket catching the candlelight, her gray eyes wary as she glanced at the others. Sir Henry Winthrop bustled in, his suit straining, his gold watch ticking loudly, his florid cheeks flushed with irritation. Marcus Vane entered last, his tailored jacket immaculate, his smile as polished as ever, though Miss Marple noted the faint strain in his eyes, like a man bracing for a storm. Raymond, playing the host, gestured to the table, where a simple spread of bread and cheese awaited, the pretense of a meal secondary to the evening's purpose. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice steady but charged. "Aunt Jane has been piecing together Captain Hargreaves's fate, and she believes we're close to answers. Let's hear her out." He sat, his notebook open, his pen poised, his eyes flicking to Miss Marple with a mix of trust and curiosity. Miss Marple folded her hands, her gaze moving from face to face, her voice gentle but unyielding. "Captain Hargreaves sought the Emerald of the Andes," she began, "guided by a map that promised the Corazon Verde, a temple hidden in a valley of red clay and ravines. He was skilled, cautious, yet he vanished, his camp torn, his map gone, his fire doused. You have all shared your stories, and I thank you for your candor. But stories, like village gossip, often hide as much as they reveal." She paused, her eyes settling on Diego. "Mr. Alvarez, you spoke of scouting a path, returning to a camp in chaos. No tracks, no blood, only a slashed tent. Yet you later admitted to seeing tracks. Near a village, tracks you thought might belong to Mr. Vane. Why keep them secret until pressed?" Diego's scar twitched, his hands clenching. "I was not sure," he said, his voice low. "The tracks were faint, not at the camp. I thought they were nothing, a local, a hunter. I did not want to accuse without proof." His eyes darted to Marcus, a flash of defiance in them, and Miss Marple noted the tension in his shoulders, like a man caught in a lie. She turned to Eliza, her expression soft but probing. "Miss Thorne, you found a knife, open, near the tent. A knife Captain Hargreaves never left unsheathed. You were fetching water, you said, yet you saw no one, heard nothing. A partner of 10 years would know his habits. Did you suspect someone, even then?" Eliza's fingers gripped her locket, her face paling. "I suspected something," she admitted, her voice tight. "Richard was worried those last days. He'd check the map, look over his shoulder. I thought it was the jungle, wearing him down. But that knife, it wasn't right. I didn't say because I didn't know who to trust." Her eyes flicked to Diego, then Marcus, a spark of doubt in them. Miss Marple nodded, her gaze shifting to Sir Henry. "Sir Henry, you funded the expedition, yet your distance from the jungle seems almost too perfect. Your watch, your bluster, they suggest a man protecting more than money. Did you know more of the map or the temple than you've told us?" Sir Henry's cheeks reddened, his hand slamming the table. "This is outrageous," he boomed. "I was at the base camp, miles away. I funded Hargreaves out of scholarly interest, nothing more. My watch? My bluster? You're spinning tales, Miss Marple." Yet his fingers fumbled with the watch, and Miss Marple saw the sweat on his brow, a telltale sign of unease. Finally, she turned to Marcus, her voice as gentle as ever. "Mr. Vane, your boots carried red clay, the clay of the temple's valley, yet you claim you were miles away. Dr. Hartley's notes place that clay only near the Corazon Verde. You admired Hargreaves, you say, but rivalry is a fire that burns close. Were you closer to the temple than you've admitted?" Marcus's smile faltered, his eyes locking with hers, a flicker of steel beneath the charm. "You're sharp, Miss Marple," he said, his voice smooth but strained. "My boots? The jungle's a messy place. Clay sticks. I was north, by the river, as I said. My guides can confirm it. If Diego saw tracks, they weren't mine." His smile returned, but it was brittle, and Miss Marple noted the way his hand tightened on his glass. She leaned forward, her voice soft but relentless. "In Saint Marymead, a boy once hid a stolen apple, but the juice on his chin betrayed him. The temple's shadow, Mr. Vane, is cast by red clay, and your boots carry its mark. But let us consider another possibility." She paused, her gaze sweeping the table. "Someone followed Hargreaves to the temple, or near it. The ravine, Dr. Hartley says, is treacherous, a crumbling edge hidden by vines. A push, a moment of greed or fear, and a man could vanish, his map taken, his camp staged to suggest chaos." The room stilled, the suspects' faces taut. Eliza's hand froze on her locket. Diego's scar twitched. Sir Henry's watch ticked loudly. Marcus's smile vanished. Then Eliza spoke, her voice low. "Richard suspected someone was following us," she said. "He'd checked the trails, double back. He said Vane was too close, always asking questions in the villages." Her eyes locked on Marcus, accusation in them. Diego nodded, his voice grim. "I saw tracks, yes, near the valley. Boots, not local sandals. I should have said sooner, but I feared it was Vane." His gaze burned into Marcus, who leaned back, his hands raised in mock surrender. "Now, hold on," Marcus said, his voice sharp. "You're pinning this on me because of some mud? I wasn't there. My team was mapping our own route." But his charm cracked, his eyes darting to the door. Sir Henry's voice cut through, trembling with anger. "Enough! I won't sit here while you bicker. I funded Hargreaves, but I also hired Vane to keep an eye on him." The table froze, all eyes on him. "Not to harm him," he added quickly, "to protect my investment. Vane was to report progress, nothing more." Miss Marple's gaze sharpened, her voice calm but piercing. "And did you report, Mr. Vane? Or did you see a chance to take the emerald for yourself?" Marcus's face paled, his hands dropping to the table. I followed, yes," he stammered. "I got close, saw the temple's valley. Hargreaves was there, alone, near the ravine. I pushed him, in a moment of madness. I wanted the map, the emerald. I left him, took the pouch, staged the camp. I didn't mean for him to die." His voice broke, his charm shattered, and the room fell silent. Miss Marple nodded, her expression serene. "In St. Mary Mead, truth comes when facades fall. Thank you, Mr. Vane." As Raymond signaled for the authorities, Miss Marple's needles resumed their clicking, the temple's shadow lifting to reveal a truth as stark as the jungle's heart. Chapter 12. The Emerald's Cost. The fog had lifted from London's streets, leaving a crisp autumn morning that bathed Raymond West's Bloomsbury flat in a clear, pale light. Miss Jane Marple sat by the window, her knitting needles moving steadily, the pale pink shawl in her lap nearing completion. Her small notebook lay closed on the table, its pages filled with the threads of a mystery now unraveled. The confrontation the previous evening had laid bare the truth of Captain Richard Hargreaves's disappearance, with Marcus Vane's confession, a moment of greed, a push by the ravine, a staged camp, resolving the puzzle that had drawn her from St. Mary Mead. Yet, as the fire crackled softly and the city hummed beyond, Miss Marple's blue eyes, serene behind her spectacles, held a quiet melancholy. Truth, she thought, is a heavy prize, and its cost is often more than gold. Raymond entered, his face a mix of triumph and exhaustion, his writer's flair tempered by the weight of the night's revelations. "Aunt Jane," he said, setting a tray of tea and biscuits on the table. "You've done it again. Vane's in custody, still muttering about the emerald, though he swears he never found it. The police are searching his lodgings for the map, but I doubt it'll turn up. You were brilliant. Those boots, that red clay. How did you know?" His grin was boyish, but Miss Marple caught the flicker of awe in his eyes, as if he still marveled at her village-honed instincts. She set her knitting aside, her hands folding neatly in her lap. "It was not the boots alone, Raymond," she said, her voice gentle as ever. "In St. Mary Mead, a broken teacup once told a tale of theft because it held a smudge of jam from a stolen jar. The red clay was a smudge, a mark of place. Marcus Vane's charm was his shield, but his eyes, his hands, they betrayed him. The jungle's echo carried his secret, and the dinner brought it to light." Raymond poured the tea, his movements brisk. But the others, Diego, Eliza, Sir Henry, they all had their secrets too. Diego's tracks, Eliza's locket, Sir Henry's watch. You saw through them all. Were they involved, do you think? Miss Marple sipped her tea, her gaze drifting to the window, where the city's rooftops gleamed under a rare sun. "Involved, perhaps, but not guilty," she said. "Diego hid his tracks, fearing blame, much like our postmistress who once hid a letter to avoid trouble. His scar, his restlessness, they spoke of a man who saw more than he dared say. Eliza's locket held her loyalty, but also her doubt. She suspected Vane, but feared to voice it, like our vicar's wife who kept silent about a theft to protect a friend. Sir Henry's watch, his bluster, they hid his greed, not for the emerald itself, but for the glory it promised. He hired Vane to watch Hargreaves, a mistake born of mistrust, not murder." She paused, her fingers brushing the notebook's cover. Marcus Vane, though, was different. His rivalry was afire, and the temple's shadow gave him opportunity. He followed Hargreaves, saw him unearth the emerald, or come close, and acted in a moment of greed. The push by the ravine, the stolen map, the staged camp, these were his hammer marks, as I called them. In St. Mary Mead, a gardener once buried a stolen brooch under roses, thinking it safe. Vane thought the jungle would hide his crime, but the clay clung to him. Raymond leaned back, his notebook open but untouched, his eyes fixed on her. "And the emerald? Vane says he never found it, but he had the map. Could it still be out there, in the temple?" Miss Marple's lips curved faintly, a gesture that held both wisdom and wistfulness. "The emerald," she said, "is a dream, and dreams are costly. Hargreaves may have found it or come close before Vane's betrayal. The map is gone, perhaps lost in the ravine with him, or hidden by Vane in his flight. The temple keeps its secret, as the jungle does. In my village, a lost ring was never found, because it was not the ring that mattered, but the heart that sought it. The emerald's cost was Hargreaves' life, and that is enough." Raymond shook his head, his grin returning. "You're a marvel, Aunt Jane. Scotland Yard could learn a thing or two from you. Will you stay in London a bit longer? I could use your eye on my next story." Miss Marple's needles resumed their clicking, the shawl's pattern nearing its end. "London is lively, Raymond," she said, "but St. Mary Mead calls me home. There are roses to tend and secrets to overhear. Human nature, I find, is the same everywhere. Village or jungle, it betrays itself in small things. A glance, a locket, a smudge of clay. She closed her notebook, her gaze distant, as if seeing the Andes' vines and ravines. Captain Hargreaves sought a treasure, but found a truth instead. That is the cost of such quests. As Raymond escorted her to the station later that day, the city bustling around them, Miss Marple carried her handbag, its contents, notebook, wool, needles, as unassuming as ever. The train to St. Mary Mead awaited, and with it the quiet rhythms of her garden and her village, where secrets, like treasures, were never buried too deep to find. "Human nature," she murmured, stepping aboard, "is the greatest treasure and the greatest peril." Her needles clicked softly, a final note in the symphony of a mystery solved.